It's 6 p.m. on Sunday, April 20th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Conn-young.
I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us.
It's been 105 hours or more than 4 days since a nearly 7,000-ton Sewol-ho ferry sank into waters with more than 470 people on board. Now, 58, we're getting reports just now, have been confirmed dead and nearly 250 remain unaccounted for.
The search and rescue operations have continued for the last 4 days, but with very little results as no survivors have been found since.
However, we have new updates or latest developments on the investigation front as to who is responsible for this accident. For that, let's go over to our Laah Hyun-kyung standby at the news center. Hyun-kyung, what are we learning?
Well, Conn-young, the transcript and an audio file of what was said between the Sewol-ho ferry and the Jindo Vessel Traffic Service, the Marine Traffic Control Tower for the region, have been made public. Take a listen. You know, as you can hear, it's difficult to make out what the two sides are saying exactly, but what is evident is that the situation sounds quite urgent. Now, the released transcript shows that the control center first contacted the sinking ferry at 9:06 a.m. Wednesday. They contacted each other 11 times and communicated for 31 minutes. You can see at 9:12 a.m. the ferry was already severely tilted, and the crew member who was talking to the control center already knew that the people on board were not able to move. And at around 9:25, the control center told the ferry to decide whether to order passengers to abandon the vessel since it didn't know the situation there. But the ferry said it was unable to make announcements because its speaker system was down by that time. And the last time the two made contact was at 9:37 a.m., during which the ferry told the control tower that only the people who were able to escape to the left side of the ferry were able to leave the vessel.
Okay, Hyun-kyung, do we know now for sure who was communicating from the Sewol-ho ferry?
Well, Daniel, they say a senior crew member was apparently contacting the control tower from the sinking ferry, but whether the captain was in the steering room is not known yet. The captain, Lee Jun-seok, he's facing a tremendous criticism for escaping the ship before the passengers, and what we need more information on is why the captain didn't inform the passengers promptly about the situation during that 30-minute time frame, and why the crew members evacuated before the passengers. Back to you both.
Right, those are some of the answers or questions that we want answered. All right, Hyun-kyung, do stay put. We will check back in with you later in the newscast.
Will do.
Now, as we mentioned earlier on, rescue teams retrieved more bodies from inside the hull overnight and earlier this Sunday morning. Unfortunately, it looks like we can expect the death toll to increase even more in the coming hours and days.
We have two of our correspondents, Kim Young-gil and Yuri-an, who are down at Pengmokang Harbor, just 20 kilometers from where the Sewol-ho ferry capsized. And it's, of course, the focal point of search and rescue operations. They
join us live from the site. Myung-gil, Lian, there must be an increasing number of bodies being retrieved. We are seeing the death toll rise by the minute, but no change in the number of survivors.
That's right. The death toll has been rising as quickly as it has been throughout the day today. But in the latest number we have got here is also stands at 58. The rescue team here has been trying to identify the identities of the bodies that's been coming into the harbor, and they have also set up a board here where they're writing down the descriptions of the bodies and also the clothing that is on the bodies as well, for the families watching in fear that those descriptions match up to their children. Now, dozens of bodies have been coming into the harbor today ever since midnight yesterday. That was when the Coast Guard here was able to break into the windows of the vessel for the very first time. Now, also, there are special tents set up behind me where DNA samples of the bodies are being retrieved, and the bodies after that are getting transferred to the hospital.
And rescue operations also continue today. Tonight, 2 underwater drones will be coming here at the Paengmokhan Harbor along with 2 U.S. technical experts who will lend support to the ongoing rescue operations. Also, a total of 5 guidelines which divers can use to get into the vessel have been attached to the Sewol-ho ferry. With the new routes into the ferry secured, the divers can all simultaneously carry out rescue operations. The emergency headquarters here says they have over 560 divers carrying out an all-out rescue and search operations today, along with 204 vessels and 34 aircraft. A side-scan sonar has been dispatched to detect any bodies that may drift away from the accident site.
That's right. And also the weather conditions are still looking pretty clear out here. We're getting a bit of a wind, but they are going just at about 6 meters per second. The tides have also been pretty calm throughout the day at about just going at about just as high as 1 meter. Now the families here are watching the rescue operations from afar, just hoping and just holding on to the last remaining hope that their loved ones are still alive out there. Back to you guys in the studio.
Some developments that will help fuel the hopes of the families and friends of the victims. That was our Kim Young-gil and Yuri-an reporting live from the Paengmokhan Harbor nearby the accident site. Thank you for that report, guys.
Now let's try getting a better sense of the situation down in Jindo, the progress made by the search and rescue team off Korea's southwestern coast, and what could be done to speed up operations there. And
for that, David Jordan-Smith, a secretary at the International Maritime Rescue Federation, joins us live via Skype from the United Kingdom.
David, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the search and rescue operations currently underway. What is your assessment of the quality and the scale of what we're seeing today here in Korea?
If I may, I'd just like to begin by expressing the IMRF's deepest sympathies for everyone involved in this terrible accident, and to say that it is a very, very complex situation. An incident of this scale, of this magnitude, is always very, very difficult indeed to handle. It appears that the operation has been handled extremely well. The response was rapid and very thorough. A very large number of search and rescue units have been involved, and every effort, I'm sure, has been made to rescue as many people as can be rescued in this tragedy.
Well, it's been over 105 hours since the accident. So according to standards followed by your organization, David, what kinds of operations should be taking place at this point?
Clearly, the focus of the operation now has, for some days really, has now moved to the wreck itself. There would be, and there is, I'm sure, a continuing search operation in the area around the wreck, bearing in mind the strong currents, the very difficult conditions. But the focus is on the wreck itself, as we are hearing. The dive teams working in extremely difficult circumstances, gaining access to the ferry and trying to find whatever they can find on board.
David, there is a lot of talk about what should have been done by the captain and crew at the time of the sinking, that actions taken immediately after the ship capsized could have saved many more lives. We're talking about a 6,800-ton vessel with more than 470 people on board. Now, what kind of safety and evacuation measures should have been taken to save passengers on such a humongous ferry?
I think I should say that it is far too early to judge what was or was not done. We do not have all the facts about the situation faced by the master and crew of the ferry at the time of the accident. It would be inappropriate to comment on the particulars of this case. I can say in general terms, if an accident occurs on a ferry of this type, passenger ferry, it all depends on the circumstances and how the master of the vessel assesses the data that he or she has available. It would be good practice to move people to assembly stations. These are the points of the vessel at which people can gain access to the survival craft, lifeboats or life rafts, so that they are there ready with life jackets on and prepared to leave the vessel should that be required. You wouldn't normally evacuate a vessel just because there has been an accident. There are dangers involved in evacuation. You would only evacuate if that was seen to be the safer option. I know a lot of people have said it, and it is true. The ship is, generally speaking, the best lifeboat. If the vessel, as in this case, clearly, is in deep trouble and is capsizing, sinking, then an evacuation, of course, should be commenced. And that takes time. And it's a very, very difficult decision for any shipmaster, because he has to make the decision and allow sufficient time for that evacuation to take place. Awfully difficult. And as I say, what happened in this case, I'm afraid we have to wait until we have the full facts before we can properly assess what should or should not have been done.
So as much as the victims' relatives and families and friends would love to jump the gun at the moment, we need to wait for all the facts to find out what really happened and who is responsible, or who are some of the parties responsible for making the wrong judgment at the point. Well, David, thank you so much for sparing your time and sharing your insights with us. That's David Jordan Smith. We appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you.
우리도 너희를 포기하지 않을 테니까 너희도 절대 포기하지 마.
Since Wednesday for 5 days now, many of the family members of the missing have been camping out at an auditorium nearby the accident site. They have stayed at the gym where families sleep on the open floor on top of blankets in the stuffy gym.
Our Kwon So-ah has also been with them, and we connect to her live now. So, what's the situation there like?
Guys, not much has changed throughout the day here at the Jindo Indoor Auditorium. The painful wait is continuing. Now, a few hours ago, the representatives of the families of the missing have briefed the families here at the auditorium on demands concerning further rescue operations. Now, they said shuttle buses from the auditorium to the Pengmokang Harbor will now run every 20 minutes instead of 30. Also, that ships will be provided for families who wish to get closer to the rescue operations themselves. Now, meanwhile, Prime Minister Chung Hong-won was scheduled to talk to the families of the missing here in the Jindo Indoor Auditorium. However, he has not made appearance inside the gym, but instead held a closed-door meeting with family representatives discussing the pulling out of the Sewol-ho ferry by the use of cranes. Now, overnight, families and friends of the missing went out into the streets in anger directed at the government, shouting that they would go to the presidential office of Cheongwade to air their grievances, but they were held back by police from leaving. Now, Prime Minister Chung came to the site around 2:40 a.m. to control the situation, but found himself in a row with the families for around 3 hours.
Right, the kind of stress, the kind of emotions that are running high amongst these family members, that must be just unbearable, as is the weight, as it wears down the families and friends of the victims for 5 days. That's how long some of them have been spending sleepless nights in that auditorium. So how are they holding up?
Conn-young, the families have been going through tons of emotions. They've been crying and shouting, but it seems like many of them are now just too exhausted to even shed tears. Now, many of them are just staring blankly into 2 television screens, one showing the rescue operations and one the news. And the descriptions of the recovered body, including their gender, height, clothing, shoes, and other features, which are provided to them as well. Now, earlier, I saw 2 high school girls started to cry aloud when a description matched with their families or friends. Now, some people have been passing out and they were rushed out on stretchers. Medical personnel are on 24-hour standby here, and I talked to one of the doctors who said most families come for therapy or to measure their blood pressure. Now, the days of waiting are becoming more and more painful for the families here at the Jindo Indoor Auditorium as hope is gradually fading. And that's all I have for now. Back to you guys in the studio.
Well, thank you for that, Soa. That was our Kwon Soa reporting live from the Chindo Indoor Auditorium, where families have been waiting for their loved ones to return for 5 days now.
Now, for some sad news, 2 of the bodies recovered earlier in the day arrived at the Mokpo Hanguk Hospital not too long ago.
And our Lee Seung-jae, who has been standing by throughout the day, was there as it was happening. So Seung-jae, tell us the latest.
네, 목포 한국병원에 나와 있습니다. 이 병원은 생존자의 치료에 대비해
Now at 4 p.m. earlier today, one of the bodies that were recovered earlier in the day did arrive at the scene in an ambulance, where 2 of the family's members also arrived in the ambulance as well, which meant that the body was identified. Now 30 minutes later, a second ambulance arrived at the scene as well, but none of the family members were in the ambulance, which meant that the body was not identified. Now from what I understand right now, the bodies that are recovered would be transferred to any one of the hospitals nearby, whether they're identified or not. But so far, with each ambulance that arrives, emotions are running high here at the Mokpo Hanguk Hospital.
Now, Seung-jae, tell us how they're going about identifying the bodies.
Now, we are at the 5th day of the accident, so right now, with each day, it is getting harder and harder to identify the bodies. But from what I understand, for all the students that were identified at the scene, they are quickly being transferred over to Ansan. Now, of course, there is a DNA testing that's going on at the scene in hopes to identify some of the bodies. But, of course, if they're not able to identify the bodies, they are then quickly transferred to one of the 3 hospitals nearby, including the Mokpo Hanguk Hospital. That's all for now. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you for that, Seung-jae. That was our Lee Seung-jae reporting from Mokpo Hanguk Hospital.
We now turn to our Connie Kim as she is standing by at Korea University Ansan Hospital, where the most number of the high school students injured in the accident are being treated.
And some of the deceased have also arrived there. Connie?
Right, guys, I'm standing by at the funeral hall of Korea University Ansan Hospital. Now, we are getting latest updates that the bodies that arrived at Mokpo Hanguk Hospital is now on its way over to this city of Ansan. Now, none of the 6 deceased passengers on board have been released to their families yet, but earlier in the day, 6 bodies in other hospitals and funeral halls in this Ansan region have returned to their families. Now, this is the first time any Danon High School student has been released. Remember that more than 320 students from that school were on board the ill-fated ferry. Now, inside the funeral hall, not much has changed as many friends are still crying out the names of the deceased ones. Now, we're not sure how many of the bodies recovered today will be transported here, but we're definitely expecting them to arrive here very soon.
Right, Ansan is a suburb of Seoul where this particular high school, Danon High School, where more than 300 of its students were in this ferry, is located. And of course, from Mokpo to Ansan, I think it's about a 3 hours drive. But I heard that there was a press briefing held by Gyeonggi Provincial Office of Education. Give us some details, Connie.
Right, Conn-young. There was a press briefing held here in this region at Ansan Olympic Museum earlier in the day, held by the Education Office. Now, they had confirmed that 23 Danon High School students and four teachers have been confirmed dead as of now. 19 of the students' bodies have been returned here to Ansan region, where the school is located, with 4 left in the local hospitals in Jindo Island. A joint investigation headquarters office is set up in cooperation with Ansan City, headed by Gyeonggi Governor Kim Moon-soo, so they can coordinate. Now, the task force team has deployed helicopters, personnel, ambulances, and equipment to speed up the remaining rescue operations at Jindo Island. It plans to set up an emergency task force team on the island to help provide support for the families who are waiting in agony for any good news from their beloved ones. Back to you guys.
Well, thank you for that, Connie. That was our Connie Kim reporting from Korea University Ansan Hospital, where some receive medical attention, some mourn the loss of loved ones, and others anxiously await for any news.
The nation is united to share, if not all, the grief of the families who are desperate for more information about their missing loved ones.
Some 5,000 volunteers from more than 240 private and religious groups are at the site with the family members offering necessities and encouragement. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more on this story.
As days pass by, families who long for their loved ones are growing wary. In times of crisis like these, a warm meal and a helping hand are a great help. Volunteers from various relief organizations came to Shindo Island, where the sunken ferry is located and where family members are gathered to find more about their missing family members.
A lot of families came rushing to site when they heard about the ferry incident. So we're trying to provide necessities while they wait to hear news of their loved ones.
The health of the families is deteriorating as time goes by, as rescue operations are further being delayed. Medicine and medical supplies are running short.
We'll provide medicine and medical supplies until the crisis recedes. We're planning to have a fundraiser so that we can keep renewing the supplies.
The nation is being united in times of crisis. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And the thoughts and prayers are not only coming from Korea. The hope for a miracle knows no borders.
Messages of support are pouring in from around the world. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Please join me in praying for the victims of the ferry disaster in Korea and their families. This is what Pope Francis posted on his Twitter account this weekend. The Pope is due to visit Korea in August, becoming the first head of the Catholic Church to make the trip in 25 years. Pope Francis is just one of countless people who are grieving for the victims of the capsized Sewol-ho ferry around the globe. English Premier League football club Manchester United tweeted that, "Our thoughts are with everybody affected by the ferry disaster in South Korea." Arsenal defender Per Mertesacker tweeted, "My compassion to the families and people in Korea being affected from the Sewol accident," adding in Korean that he prays for a miracle. Ahead of her Korea tour next week, British singer Connie Talbot tweeted, "She's leaving for Korea at such a sad time," and said profits from the concert will be directed towards the ferry accident. Over in the Thai capital of Bangkok, at a prayer event hosted by Nation TV, citizens flagged banners and signs with words of condolences and support for the Korean victims. On the other side of the globe in downtown Boston, Korean students from Harvard University, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Boston University prayed for the safe rescue of all that were aboard the Sewol-ho ferry. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Our thoughts and prayers are with them. Now let's go back to our Laah Hyun-kyung for the latest on the investigation into the sunken ferry. Hyun-kyung, any updates there?
Well, Conn-young, very quick update. Public Prosecutor General Kim Jin-tae ordered an investigation into the Sewol-ho ferry operator, the Cheonghaejin Marine Company. The prosecution says the decision was made because the disaster occurred possibly due to a failure in management between the owner of the vessel and its management. So they plan to require the operator to take responsibility for the accident if that is the case. Prosecutors say this investigation will be carried out separately from the one that the Joint Investigation Team is currently conducting, and travel bans have also been imposed on some 30 to 40 company personnel, including the crew members that were aboard the sinking ferry.
Right, Laah Hyun-kyung, she will be staying with Arirang News all throughout the night to give you the latest updates. Thank you, Hyun-kyung, for that.
No problem.
Now, the weather has been playing a big factor in the search and rescue operations off Korea's southwestern coast.
And joining us now is Michelle Park for a look at the conditions down near Chindo. Michelle, how are the conditions in the area looking right now?
Well, it's currently clear with a few clouds in Chindo and with the tides coming in at heights of 2.2 meters, and it seems to improve more throughout the week. Now, all of the periods of the slow tides has passed today. However, we have 4 times of the slow tides coming in for tomorrow, which the first one is starting at 12:03 midnight. Now, the water temperature currently in Chindo is at 11.6 degrees Celsius with winds blowing at 6 meters per second. second, and the height of the wave at 0.5 to 1.5 meters, which is considered calm and looks even better for tomorrow. Now, the weather in Jindo for tomorrow looks similar to today, with slower tides with less wind for the rescue efforts to continue out easily. Now, for the rest of the nation, we can expect some partly cloudy skies with slightly increase in the fine dust levels in the central region in the morning, which will clear up by the late afternoon. Well, that's all I have at this moment. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you guys.
Thanks, Michelle, for that, and thank you for joining us this hour. Our special coverage on the nation's search and rescue efforts for survivors in Korea's ferry disaster continues. I'm Conn-young.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Stay tuned to Arirang News for the latest ongoing updates on the ferry disaster, or find us at arirang.co.kr. Thank you for watching.